Econometrix Chief Economist Dr Azar Jammine joins us for more on the story. Dr. Jammine, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So firstly, let's just begin with the fact that the Auditor-General is saying we have more provinces and government departments that are doing better at keeping financial records than before. Is that a sign of progress, really?
I would like to think it is a sign of progress. However, one must recognize that we're still sitting with 65% of the auditees not having a clean audit. So, yes, the figure has improved, but there is still a very sizable proportion of the government that is not releasing clean audits. So, yes, I think one should welcome the improvement, and I think it's also a result of continuous pressure and attention being brought to bear on these Auditor-General figures from year to year, certainly in recent years, when the real mayhem within audits have been done have attracted attention, and I think something is being done, certainly in some of the entities, to improve the level of auditing.
There is a lot to be said around how government departments and, provinces also manage their finances. It seems to me that we're not really making great progress when it comes to the administrative aspect of how money is spent and being able to account for that. And part of why I say that is that you're not only sitting, as you've highlighted, with still a very high number of, bad audit outcomes, you also are sitting with late submissions to the Auditor-General, consultants that are used, continuously to put these reports together when departments in themselves have internal individuals that are hired to do that very job.
You've actually highlighted, the fact that the Auditor-General just alerted us to the one improvement, but she is very concerned about these late submissions, also by large state-owned enterprises as well, which is very disturbing. And as you quite rightly say, why do we have to employ consultants to assist in generating decent audits when a lot of the people who should be doing so are actually fully employed and being paid to do so? Therein lies the whole question of, until we get rid of Cadre deployment, I don't think we'll get over this problem in its entirety.
Wasteful expenditure and irregularities are always budget items that, of course, cause a lot of conversation and debate. The Auditor-General is putting that figure, at least for this term between 2019 and 2024, at 22 billion rand. That is not money to be frowned on at all. What are we not getting right, again, when it comes to the management of finances? And I know often people will say, well, irregular expenditure doesn't mean that, it has been wasteful, but it also speaks to a lack of planning.
It does speak to a lack of planning. It also speaks to a lack of skills within these various entities to actually abide by the rules. And, you've got to realize that is what we're talking about. That is what studies have shown is a big weakness in South Africa's economic growth performance over the past decade. And that arises from the fact that many people were put into positions of authority who were not properly trained and do not have the competence to occupy those positions. And they were put in there, and a lot of very capable people were basically retrenched in order to put these less competent people in place, merely because of their loyalty towards the ruling party, but more specifically towards certain politicians. And that is one of the huge fault lines that we have within governance in South Africa at the moment.
When we look at the breakdown of what is also leading to this big figure of 22 billion rand of wasteful and irregular expenditure, we also see there that on the one hand it's government paying for services that, it's just simply not getting value for money on. The other is that it's paying for services that it's not even using at all, including, in some instances, properties that are being leased out, rates and taxes that are being paid, but nobody's occupying those buildings.
Absolutely. This again points to incompetence and bad planning. And it's an absolute shame when we have issues such as land reform and complaints about people not having enough access to property, that the government itself is one of the biggest culprits in not being able to utilize whatever it does have in a proper way. And that, of course, raises questions about, are we barking up the wrong tree when we talk about the need for land reform? And the government itself is one of the biggest parties to blame in this regard.
One of the other budget items, Dr. Jammine, that I think is also important to look at is the issue of claims against the state, and in particular departments where, of course, citizens feel they have a legal and civil right to sue the state. That in and of itself is also painting a picture.
Unfortunately, that is absolutely true, especially in the healthcare industry. We have seen the situation where the government has been held liable for a lot of misdemeanors, and it's costing it a fortune in terms of meeting those claims or trying to contest them. But it does point again to a lack of competence in many areas of the civil service, and that in turn is a function of the cadre deployment policy that has been pursued now for decades. But I think it was pursued more avidly when the Zuma regime took office just over a decade ago. And unfortunately, it's also a process that has unraveled and is very difficult to arrest, given that it's almost got a momentum of its own right now, and people almost rely on these malfeasance to actually get what they want.
Do you believe that we are learning the lessons we need to as a country when it comes to how we're managing our finances? Because year on year, I think there are common threads that run through the Auditor General's report, and all of them speak to accountability and the need just for the entire value chain in government to be accountable. Do you think that that is changing at all?
This is where my reference to the momentum has gathered force over the past decade, and it's almost like a runaway train that is very difficult to stop. What is needed is very strong leadership to bring people to book and to make them accountable, and we have not been seeing that. Instead, what we've seen, people in charge of only too happy to look after their own little fiefdom in order to benefit therefrom, rather than working to exert their leadership, even if it's in a manner that is unpopular, but for the well-being of the country, first and foremost, rather than for their own benefit.
Yeah, Dr. Jammine, we talk about these figures as if they throwaway numbers sometimes, but I wonder, what could we have done with 22 million in this financial term?
Yeah. Kathy, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I know you say 22 billion is a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but I think that what the Auditor General has identified is only the tip of the iceberg. I think there's been a far, far greater amount of money that has been the subject of corruption and state capture over the past decade and a half. I think if we really add the full picture into it, you're probably talking about in the trillions. But we have to start somewhere, and that's where the Auditor General is coming in. And we've been fortunate in having very solid Auditors General in recent years, and they're trying to make a difference. We'll see. And this is why I suppose one has to welcome the slight improvement that we have seen in terms of the number of clean audits, because it may speak to starting to penetrate the vicious circle of decline that we have been seeing.
Dr. Azar Jammine, we'll leave it there for tonight.